Let's bring in one of those members of Congress. Representative Chris Pappas is a Democrat of the great state of New Hampshire. He's a member of the House Transportation Committee. Representative, thank you for your patience as we listen to your party's standard bearer lay out the case here. Let's begin with this proposal. First, any particular top-line reaction you have there to the president, but I also want to get your sense on what's perhaps going to be the top question. Congressman, how are you going to pay for it?
Well, this is an issue of national concern, and I think the president laid out a strong set of priorities, many of which closely track the Moving Forward Act that was passed in the House and formulated by our Transportation and Infrastructure Committee last year. And as our committee has discovered, the cost of doing nothing, the cost of letting our infrastructure continue to crumble, the cost of unmet needs, of unmet economic potential, far exceeds the cost of this plan. These are smart investments for the future of America, to connect everyone to high-speed broadband, to address our water infrastructure, to make sure that we are improving our roads and bridges and rail systems and ports. This is about moving America forward in a fundamental way into the 21st century and ensuring that we can compete on the world stage with nations like China. The provisions in here to support workforce development, to rebuild American manufacturing. These are issues that I hope we can all rally behind as this legislation moves forward. And you do raise the important point. We can't put this on the nation's credit card. We got to be responsible about how we paid for this. And I think the president made a strong case to look at corporate tax rates to make sure that these big players right now that are either paying a very low effective rate or are getting off scot-free, that they pony up, because the biggest corporations in this country are benefiting the most from this particular piece of legislation, and I think have the most to gain over the long term. But this is about building some equity back in, making sure that we're creating good paying jobs and supporting community needs. And I think there's a lot for everyone to like in this package. And we'll see how the legislative efforts go as we move forward over the next few weeks.
Congressman, just to reiterate what JD said, thank you again for your patience and sticking with us as our president spoke. We know there's lots of disagreement over the size of this package. Representative Ocasio-Cortez saying it's too small, others saying it's too big. So what is the right amount to spend on a very ambitious package like this one?
Well, I think the fact that you have some folks saying it might be too large and others saying it's not enough, maybe this is sort of a Goldilocks moment where it's sized right. I think we will know that as we move ahead and continue to identify the details of the legislation and see how it tracks with the priorities of our committee. What I'll say is this: the federal government for the past 10 years has been passing the buck off to states and municipalities to deal with our aging and collapsing infrastructure. The federal share of infrastructure investment has actually decreased about 10% over the last decade. We need more federal resources to address unmet priorities, to be able to advance projects, and to create the backbone of success for our economy. So we can't do it without the federal government. And I think this is in the right ballpark in terms of what our country needs to address these priorities and make investments across the board.
Congressman Pappas, we did hear from Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell earlier today expressed what is likely going to be the top talking point from Republicans in opposition. Suddenly, they no longer have the gavel, and they're going to say that pesky national deficit. Now, to be fair, President Biden also just addressed that a short time ago. But what is your reaction a moment like that, where the party not in power is suddenly going to say, hey, pay no attention to the bills that we passed when we were in power that added to the deficit, but now clearly we cannot go down this path? Because you are going to hear that even from voters in your own home state.
Well, I think it's classic Mitch McConnell. He didn't bat an eyelash at giving away $2 trillion to the biggest corporations and wealthiest Americans. We saw a lot of stock buybacks happening, but not a lot of investments in the future of this country. These dollars are being put to work for everyday Americans and for the needs of our communities. And so I think we do need to have that honest conversation about how we pay for it. And we have to be responsible about this in order to create the kind of multi-year bill where we can effectively plan and that states and municipalities can count on the dollars that Washington promises. We have to have revenue attached to it. We already start at a baseline of having current existing revenues that are there for our transportation sector, but we do need to address that delta in terms of the increased spend here And I think the proposal in terms of the corporate tax rate, in terms of offshoring and making sure that there is a minimum tax for these big companies is a great place to start.
We know the White House is splitting this proposal into two, with the care economy and human infrastructure package coming in just a few weeks, Congressman. Is it wise to split it into two parts? Do you think it is more likely that both get done if it's in two different parts?
Well, I think that there's an opportunity to have the conversation about, how best to right size these proposals and what should be included, what should be separated out. I think there's a commitment across the board, understanding this pandemic that we're in right now. The COVID crisis is hitting every sector of our economy, every aspect of our community lives. It has kind of unmasked the pain that our working families and hourly wage earners have experienced throughout the past year and even prior to that. I can't tell you the number of events I've done around the rescue plan, and that relief that it is bringing to our working families is going a long way toward making sure they can meet basic expenses. So I think that's what these bills are all designed to do. Address the inequality, move our communities forward. And I think, our committee is really going to dig into the transportation and infrastructure priorities in this. And ultimately, we'll see how that all meets up and comes together in the final analysis. We do hope it starts off and ends up in a bipartisan place. But like the rescue plan, which is embraced by the vast majority of Americans, there is a difference between bipartisanship in Washington and the kind of support you can generate on a bipartisan basis across the country. I think that's the place where this infrastructure proposal lives and where a number of these other priorities live. And I hope we can reflect that in the bipartisan work that needs to happen in the Capitol as well.
So, Congressman, I know you want Republican support on this, but you and I and Henna know you are likely not going to get it, which means that, and I know you're not a senator, but it means Chuck Schumer is going to have to use budget reconciliation to get this done. What does that say that the two biggest legislative priorities for your party are largely going to get done and across the finish line without even a single Republican supporting it? What message does that send to the American people?
Well, I think you can't give up on that. And there are a number of policy priorities that are connected to infrastructure and transportation that we do have to address. And I'm not sure that the entirety of this bill can be shoehorned through the reconciliation process and meet the threshold, the arbitrary threshold, I should say, that the parliamentarian in the Senate will set. So I think the hope and goal should be to build a bipartisan bill in the House that can get to 60 in the Senate. I think we'll have to see how that process goes. And if it doesn't go in the direction that it should, then I think we have to explore the avenue that is available to get something over the finish line. This is urgent help that our country needs to move forward and to recover and to be the strong economic superpower that lives in our business community and in all of our communities across the country. So I'm hoping we can start in a bipartisan place and see how it goes.
We will certainly see how it goes. And it is a really important piece of legislation, Congressman, so I hope you'll continue to join us here on the News Wrap as we inch our way forward in the process. Representative Chris Pappas, Democrat of New Hampshire. Thank you, sir, for taking the time.